Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Harry Goslin. I'm president of Ontario Compensation Employees Union, a proud member of CUPE. I'm privileged to be standing here next to Fred Hahn, president of CUPE Ontario, Janice Folk-Dawson, executive vice president, Ontario Federation of Labour, and Bhutila Karpoche, NDP at Parkdale High Park. The over 3,600 members that have elected me know that I'm resolute in representing their interests. Today, I'm here to deliver a message to the Workplace Safety Insurance Board and the millions of Ontarians we serve. I'm sitting where no union president wants to be, talking to the people of Ontario about the possibility that we could be on strike, that we could be withdrawing our labor from the place where we work, and to press pause on the critical services we provide this province. This isn't something that I take lightly. Every one of my coworkers wakes up in the morning thinking about the needs of Ontario's injured workers. And when we end our workday, we don't just turn that off. The work we do affects us personally. We care about helping injured workers when they need us the most. This is the kind of job they call a caring profession. We care about the workers we serve. They aren't just names or medical records. They are real people who are at a low point in their life. They suffered a traumatic injury, have been exposed to diseases at work, or in some cases, lost their lives. Those workers and their families need our help to make it through what can be one of the most challenging times in anyone's life. We take that responsibility incredibly seriously. And we too are workers. And we too need support for our work. We take pride in the fact that our organization has a surplus position and has no unfunded liabilities. Last year, the Ford government gave direction to WSIB to refund $1.5 billion of the surplus to Ontario corporations. They could have used some of that money to support injured workers. It is shameful that over 1.5 million workers in Ontario do not have WSIB coverage. I mention this because the province should be looking out for every worker by extending coverage to all workers. I've been through a lot of negotiations with WSIB. It's never been easy, of course, but we've never been at this point, not at this point that we find ourselves now. Something has changed. Since the Ford government came to power in Ontario, we have seen a different WSIB where respect for unions is lacking and where internal struggles spill over into the public forum. We have seen this playbook before in the education worker strike, where worker representatives came to the table where employee representatives came to the table looking for cuts and concessions that erode working conditions to the workforce. WSIB needs to invest in the most valuable asset, the highly skilled, caring workforce. I want to tell you what I observe in the faces and the lives of people that I work with. Too many of my co-workers are running on fumes. When the workers who deliver the very services Ontarians rely on are struggling, it has an unavoidable impact on service delivery, and I know we can do better. We need resources and investment. We need investment in training so that we can improve service delivery. Once we do that, employee wellness will also improve. The WSIB has been around for over 100 years and has never been on strike before. But things are so bad that my co-workers came out in historic numbers and delivered a resounding strike vote of 97.3% and over 87% participation in that strike vote. That's virtually unheard of, and that sends a powerful message to get to the table and get to a fair deal. As we speak, my co-workers are organizing. Thousands have already registered for picket duty. Dozens of strike captains are trained. If we need to take legal strike action, we are ready. Accepting the status quo is simply not an option. I want to echo the powerful words of our friends at the Ontario Federation of Labour. Enough is enough. The union's decision to commence strike action will be informed by what happens in the coming days of bargaining. Members have made it abundantly clear that they cannot accept a deal that does not address the serious and systemic workload problems, solutions to resolve our grievances, and fair compensation. Members' morale at WSIB has been a major concern and cannot be addressed by clawing back provisions of the collective agreement. My co-workers and I are taking a stand right now, this year, this round of bargaining, to defend our wellness and standard of living and to fight for a WSIB that prioritizes workers and their needs. Workers have all too often observed management rationalize their wages and bonuses. It's workers who feel the sting of inflation. No one should be asked to do more with less. There are only 2 days of negotiations left before our strike deadline of May 30th. 2 days. Sadly, we are not yet close to a deal. If the WSIB cannot present an offer that respects my co-workers and our needs, we will be forced to take legal strike action. We don't want that to happen. Nothing concerns us more than the effect that job action might have on injured workers who need our help. While we do our best to mitigate those effects, we can't allow our employer to exploit our compassion for injured workers in order to force a deal that puts us even further behind. And we know Ontarians don't want this. We're ready to do whatever it takes to get a deal. We've got amazing allies beside us, and I hope the WSIB can see what the rest of us see and prevent this from happening. Now I'd like to invite my friend, President, CUPE Ontario, Fred Hahn, who is always willing to fight on behalf of workers and for what's right, to speak. Over to you, Fred.
Thanks for that introduction, Harry. My name is Fred Hahn, and I'm the president of CUPE Ontario, and I'm privileged to be here today with Harry Goslin, the longtime president of CUPE Local 1750, representing 3,600 members working at the Workplace Safety and Insurance Board. If nothing changes, in less than 5 days, those 3,600 workers will start job action. This is a critical moment. WSIB's founding principle, the reason it exists, is to support Ontarians who get injured or sick at work. CUPE Ontario is deeply committed to that mission, to public support for injured workers. It's why we've campaigned so fervently to expand access to WSIB, to make sure that every worker in this wealthy province of ours has the benefits they need if the worst case scenario comes to pass and they get hurt on the job, to make sure that families have the support they need, to make sure that they can get through the most trying of times, to make sure that we, as a province, are continually making our workplaces safer and more responsible, with skilled professionals completing workplace safety assessments. WSIB might have insurance in its name, but it's really a critical social safety net for workers, and that safety net is fraying. In fact, it's actively being torn by leadership who seem to have forgotten their mandate and confused their priorities. The WSIB system only works. It can only protect Ontarians and support workers when the members who work there have the time, the training, and the resources to do their jobs effectively. It's not the case right now, and it hasn't been the case for some time. Years ago, in some boardroom or corner office, a decision was made to stop investing in those who provide these services, to let staffing levels stagnate. That decision was not made with injured workers' lives in mind. Now, I don't know those who made that decision, what they thought was coming around the corner, but I can tell you their crystal ball failed because case counts didn't plateau or decrease. They've risen, and they become more complex. A few years ago, the average WSIB case manager had about 70 cases to oversee, 70 injured workers, 70 families depending on them. Today, that number for some has ballooned to 140 cases, and some have more. First responders with PTSD, construction workers with life-altering injuries, factory workers with hearing loss, truck drivers who can no longer sit behind the wheel of a vehicle, workers whose lives and livelihoods have changed in the fraction of a second. Not long ago, every adjudicator and case manager received 6 full months of training. WSIB employees are taught to look at the merits and justice of a case. It's what makes the service so important, but what also makes these jobs so challenging. It takes time to learn how to do them effectively. Today, that training has been cut in half. The results of all this are clear. An unreasonable workload for WSIB workers, resulting in burnout, attrition, and understaffing. a critical service that's not up to the task, leaving injured workers waiting months for their benefits. These workers keep being asked to do more with less. They have it drilled into them that productivity numbers are what matters. They watch their bosses get healthy raises. And despite an over $3 billion surplus in total last year at the WSIB, they've been told there isn't enough money to have their salaries keep pace with inflation. Adding insult to injury, they've been met at the bargaining table with concessions from an employer who seems to have tried to make their priorities crystal clear. So allow me to do the same on behalf of CUPE Ontario. We are steadfast in our commitment to workers at the WSIB and to all of the injured workers who depend on this important safety net. The old way of negotiations where employers drag their feet, ignore what workers need, try to extract concessions at bargaining tables, well, it's no longer on. There's a changing tide in labor relations. We saw that last fall. We saw it all through the spring. Workers at every level. The WSIB appears to be bargaining in some kind of bubble, refusing to acknowledge this changing tide, as if historic strikes haven't taken place, as if inflation isn't crushing workers. They need to wake up to this new reality. This is an alarm bell for the WSIB and for all of Ontario. This system that started as a safety net for injured workers has slowly, almost imperceivably, migrated into something else entirely. Far from its founding principles, it's becoming focused on the needs of corporations. These negotiations are taking place as we quickly approach Injured Workers' Day. June 1st is in fact the 40th anniversary of this important day. Ontarians deserve a WSIB led by people committed to safeguarding the very workers who are the heart of the commitment to supporting workers who are injured at work. The members of CUPE Local 1750 embody that commitment. That's why I'm here, to be clear about the CUPE Ontario's commitment and all 280,000 of our members all across the province to supporting the workers at the WSIB in every way we can to make sure they get a fair deal. That's what CUPE Ontario will continue to fight for. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Janice Folk-Dawson. I'm an injured worker, and I'm the Executive Vice President of the Ontario Federation of Labour. The Federation represents over 1 million Ontario workers in 54 affiliate unions. We are honored to be standing shoulder to shoulder with our colleagues from CUPE Ontario and from CUPE 1750, Fred Hahn and Harry Goslin. This fight is not theirs alone. No worker fights alone. This was a lesson learnt from the education workers' fight. It was the lesson of the Public Service Alliance of Canada's fight. Indeed, it is the prevailing lesson of every union fight. Workers, no matter what industry we work in or who our bosses are, must and will stand in solidarity with one another. That is how we level the playing field with corporations that want to impose their will and governments that want to roll back public services. CUPE 1750 workers bear a heavy burden. I know from personal experience how vital a role these workers play in the lives of injured workers. They don't turn off at night and forget about the hurt Ontarians waiting for benefits or the families struggling to pay their bills and put food on the table. They serve workers. Their bosses appear to be serving only themselves and their corporate friends. How else do you explain the $1.5 billion that went into rebates or the cost reductions they offered this year? WSIB leadership is signaling their priority isn't the people doing the work or the injured workers in need of help. It's corporate interests. Like President Hahn, I am concerned about this reoccurring strategy by employers when it comes to workers' needs and proposals. Enough is enough. Employers are under the impression that workers aren't willing to fight for what we deserve. I have a personal mantra, a guiding principle that mandates my work. What you permit, you promote. We at the OFL will not permit an employer to act like the WSIB is intending, to put corporate rebates and bosses' raises above the health and safety of injured Ontarians and the livelihoods of workers. I stand with Harry and these critical members, as do more than 1 million workers across Ontario.
Good morning. I'm Bhutila Karpoche, NDP MPP for Parkdale High Park, here on behalf of the Ontario NDP to stand in solidarity and support the workers at WSIB. The WSIB is a critical part of the province's safety net, and this system does not work without WSIB workers. The workers at WSIB are not getting the resources they need to do their jobs well, to ensure that this critical part of our social services continues to function and they're not being given the wages they deserve. We know the Ford government's record with workers and their low-wage policies. We have seen them try to do the same thing with education workers less than a year ago. Ontarians cannot afford a government that does not stand with workers. It's time for the Ford government to value the labor of WSIB workers, show respect for injured workers from across the province who need a WSIB system that works. Workers at WSIB deserve a fair deal. The Ford government should not let these negotiations drag on until the workers have no option but to take action. The Ontario NDP stands in solidarity with WSIB workers and workers all across this province. Thank you.
Thanks so much. That concludes the remarks, and we're happy to take any questions if there are any. Thanks so much to Bhutila for being here, to Janice for being here, and to Harry and the bargaining team at Local 1750 for all of your work, and to the amazing members all across Ontario working so hard every day to support injured workers. Know you have our solidarity.